This case deals with the late Vietnam War shoot-down of an Air Force F-4E Phantom II aircraft. It comprised of two men, the pilot in the front cockpit and his weapons systems officer in the back cockpit. They were hit, went in, crashed, and burned. Other eyewitnesses stated that they did not witness either an ejection or an escape. Whatever the case, these two men were never actually accounted for because their remains had never been found. The American military has an unwritten and a written code, and that solemn code is, we will leave no man or person behind.
We are tasked to support the Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam, and those are the folks that go out into the field that do the recoveries where they're looking for the human remains. Now, the problem that we have with cases that we're seeing in recent years is we're finding very minimal human remains.
So when a team shows up at a lost site and it's been 40, maybe even 50 years after the fact that it happened, we are seeing a consistent pattern that anything organic, the human body, cotton, silk, is almost virtually gone. It is completely degraded and consumed by nature. What does remain are the artifacts that are man-made or synthetic.
We are tasked to know all the different uniform variations for all the military services from essentially World War I all the way through current day. So you can imagine everything from head to toe, that's a lot of equipment, and knowing when the equipment was used and when it was taken out of service.
I know what this piece is. I know what that piece is. But that doesn't prove what it is. The fact is, in which to substantially prove that this is in fact the ear cup retainer portion of a flight helmet, is to research it, understand it, and then ideally, which is why we have so many equipment examples here, is to physically match it to its respective location. And that's why it's imperative for us not only to know historically and technically what an equipment item is, but to have a specific example of these equipment items in which to make a final physical comparison. At that point, once I've compared it to a master reference item, there's absolutely no question as to what it is and where its origin is.
I've got 43 years of collecting. Alex has got probably 30 years. But that's the beauty of it. That's the material and the knowledge that we bring to the table to answer those questions of those very unique cases. Again, can we determine that if people were present there at the site? And we've had very good success. We've worked about 200 cases, mainly involving Air Force crashes.
We're getting flashes out the target one. Watch it.
Fast forward about 20 years, in 1997, American teams find the crash site in Cambodia. They dig it, they find valuable life sciences equipment artifacts. Those artifacts which pertain to the equipment systems worn by the individual, the life sciences gear worn by both men, were then forwarded to us. And the question became, can you account for either man or both men strictly by looking at the equipment evidence? And thus far, unequivocally, the answer is yes. I have enough evidence by analyzing and identifying the artifacts in which to put both men in the aircraft at the time of impact.
And we're doing that for the families. Families are the ones that are still very interested in what happened to their loved one, even after 50, 60, 70 years.
Because the families that have loved ones that go missing in action, they have nothing. There's no gravestone, there's no funeral, there's no closure. And so any answer that we can provide as a nation and as a laboratory to the family member about what happened to my loved one, those things provide tremendous consolence and closure to each individual that is affected by this particular aspect. And for us, you can find no greater honor.
Space station's accelerating, leaving us behind.
Astronaut and retired Air Force Colonel Mike Fossum has been to space not once,
Booster ignition.
not twice, but 3 times, for a total of 194 days. So you'd think it would take a lot to impress him. But when he heard these young airmen speak,
there's 2 kinds of distortions that we're actually experiencing.
And then I can put the CubeSat in the middle of it.
We're mostly interested in orbit prediction. And
how could he not be impressed?
It's a little embarrassing to think that a lot of the stuff that they're working on now is commonplace in their laboratories, in their young hands, hadn't even been conceived that 30-some years ago. So this is all new stuff. It's cutting-edge stuff. It's new technology. It's critical technology. And it's exciting. And they're changing the way that we address threats for this nation.
31 years ago, before he was an astronaut
That's great.
and a colonel, Mike also was a young lieutenant and a student at the Air Force Institute of Technology, or AFIT, on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. AFIT is the Air Force's Graduate School of Engineering. And for one day, Colonel Fossum went back to school to meet current students as part of National Engineers Week. His message?
Technology is how we stay ahead. And it's really, really important that we maintain that edge. And that means we always have to be pushing, looking for the way to make it higher, faster, smaller, more invisible. And the technology that's wrapped up in all of those things and doing them together is complicated. It's hard stuff, but it's worth it.
During his tour, Colonel Fossum talked with students about the projects they were working on.
Simulated satellite.
The students were thrilled.
It was really cool to get to meet an astronaut, get to talk a little bit about what we do here at AFIT, get to talk about tracking satellites with somebody who's been in a satellite, essentially.
It was motivating, it was inspiring, it just makes you want to work harder, and the fact that he understood what I was showing him as far as my research goes, and the fact that he came through here, and it gives you kind of a vector to look forward to some of the achievements he's made.
Achievements that might not take all of these airmen to space like Colonel Fossum, but continue to keep the United States Air Force the world's best.
This really striking thing is what's going on in the laboratories. It's not just the theoretical education, but the students here are putting all of the theory into practice in projects, programs that are directly applicable to the needs of the Air Force, and that's so evident that that's a real focus.
Reporting from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio.
Oh, that's great.
I'm Matthew Klaus.
Great. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in that building.
If you want to be a biologist, there are very few things that you can work with that are as diverse as insects. I'm the civilian public health consult entomologist, and my mission is to provide public health at bases or civil engineers at bases the information they need to either protect themselves from vector-borne diseases, make decisions on whether they're collecting mosquitoes that are going to be transmitting a virus, say West Nile, malaria, because my mission does extend outside the United States, so I could be helping a base somewhere in Afghanistan that has mosquitoes coming in. We get mosquitoes sent in, they come in sealed dishes, pop them open, write down their source location, so which base, where on the base, what date, who collected it. Sort the mosquitoes out, so that's where the microscope get used. Sorts them out into whether they're vectors of malaria, West Nile, whatever we're looking for. When there's actual virus present, that changes the whole story. Actually, here at USAFSM, we wrote Air Force-wide West Nile fact sheets so that our public health offices can have access to say, hey, this is how you do it while you're on active duty, wearing your uniform. If you're working outside, you're wearing DEET and hopefully a permethrin-treated uniform. And so we can give that, remind bases of that, say, hey, you have West Nile positive mosquitoes. You should know that this is what your people need to know when they're out there doing the field work. If they're working on the flight line, they should be aware that they're at risk, and these are ways to reduce their risk. A lot of our missions are not thousands of boots on the ground, they're small forces on the ground. Some of those can't suffer a 25% loss. If there's only 4 guys on your special ops mission and one of them gets malaria or dengue or leishmaniasis and you have to evac them out, you can have a total mission failure. So entomology, our mission in part is to protect Air Force interests, reduce or eliminate those threats. I wanted to have a job where I had a positive effect on people. And in entomology, where you're protecting human lives and health, it's really hard to find a job where one person can have a really big impact like that and say, hey, you have a threat to this many thousands of people on a base, or in some cases, you have a threat to your entire country. If we can tackle that, remediate the threat, reduce it from your number 2 or number 1 threat to human health to near the bottom, then one entomologist can have a huge positive effect on people's lives.
As we've covered previously in this video, knowing what to expect and how to prepare makes any crisis more manageable and could save your life. Please consider these 3 simple steps. Be prepared. Anticipate emergencies most likely to affect you and your family. Familiarize yourself with the signs of events that come without warning, and know the local advance alerts and warnings and how you will receive them. This simple step will help you implement step 2 and will also aid you during a crisis. Next, make a plan. Your family may not be together when a disaster strikes, so it is important to plan in advance how you will get to a safe place, how you will contact one another, how you will get back together, and what you will do in different situations. You will be better prepared to safely reunite your family and loved ones during an emergency if you think ahead and communicate with others in advance. And lastly, build a kit. A disaster supplies kit is simply a collection of basic items you may need in the event of an emergency. Try to assemble your kit well in advance. You may have to evacuate at a moment's notice. This includes having food, water, and other supplies in sufficient quantity to last at least 72 hours. Local officials and relief workers will be on the scene after a disaster, but they cannot reach everyone immediately. You could get help in hours, or it might take days. Additionally, basic services such as electricity, gas, water, sewage treatment, and telephones may be cut off, so your supplies kit should contain items to help you manage during these outages. In conclusion, Benjamin Franklin got it right when he said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We urge you to go through the basic prep. It'll help you know what to do
when disaster strikes.